Special session, 6 o'clock, June 1st, 2023. May I have roll call, please?
Assistant Capital
Here.
Mr. Otway, Vice President.
Here.
Mr. Campbell. Mr. Smallwood.
Here.
Mr. Wilson.
Here.
Mr. Campbell, how many of you is there? Pledge the flag, please. I pledge
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay. So, we all know why we are here this evening. We are calling it new business. Before we start, I would like to just reaffirm that this is a special meeting and we will have no public comment at this meeting. So I wanted to bring that first and foremost. I know if some of you have questions, we will try and address them after the meeting. Okay? So at this point, I'm going to turn it over to Mr. Knoll, who is going to go over what we discussed.
All right, so first, I got to give a couple minutes here. I just came back from maybe one of the best high school softball games of all time. Okay, of all time. 5th and 7th inning, we're down 1-0. We didn't have a hit, didn't have somebody get hit, didn't have a walk. We didn't have anybody on base for the first 6 innings. We get a nice little hit, it scribbles out there, we get a couple girls on base, we bunt, we score a run. It's 1-1. We have runners on second and third. Coach makes one of the best calls maybe of all time. He calls a bunt as the girl from third is stealing home. Bunt goes down, 5 feet forward, our girl from third scores, we win the game 2. Taking us to the state championship game on Saturday.
Wow.
All right, so we got one more to go. But it was awesome, just incredible. Now my graduation school, I think it's there are great things happening in campus. Trust me, there's some great things. You have a state championship in football that you finish up with girls in softball. That is an amazing school. So we're looking forward. All right, so that's my little interjection right there. But Saturday, the teams that are playing right now, that winner, we play. Okay? 12:30. Okay, so let's talk about why we're here. I'm going to go over some of the feedback from the last board meeting. If you watched it, if you were there, you all know what that was. I'm going to kind of summarize that for you a little bit today. We're going to have some open discussion from the board members. Okay, we're going to get their thoughts and feelings on what their thoughts are moving forward, and then we'll kind of talk about next steps. So here's what I and my lovely assistant, Miss Judy, where are you?
Here I am.
In the back there.
Hello.
She joined me on the stage, which was awesome as a committee member. Here's basically what we said. Okay, we talked about this committee's recommendation. Okay, we're going to build that new K4 at Hilltop. We're going to build that middle school, active middle school site. We're going to do select renovations here at the high school. And then we're going to renovate Hilltop a little bit to bring me and all my folks in from administration over to the board. And that was about $140.6 million project. Okay, so we threw that out there and we let the board talk about it. Here's the feedback that I received. In general, the board said, you know what, we like these two things. We like the current grade bands, which was one of our major talking points throughout the 10 weeks. And number 2, we like using district-owned property. Okay? However, the board has some concerns about student and staff safety, having school going on and building a school right by it on both sites, as you all know. Okay? That's going to be Hilltop and the middle school. And just general disruptions. And at the end of the day, I can't argue with either one of those points. I can't. Okay? I lived through one in West Springs. I know what that looked like there on the truck. There was also some concerns about having 3 stories for that middle school being built, okay, on that site as well. So if you heard, some of the comments were, what else can we do? What would a variation of this plan possibly look like moving forward? And the board kind of took off on that. And here's kind of where they landed. Just to set the stage for the discussions coming up, they say, hey, you know what, how about we do this? let's take this new middle school build and let's put it on Shields Road. Okay? And go ahead and do some renovations at the high school. Now, I call that phase one. That would kind of happen right out the gate. Phase two is, let's abate demo the middle school and put the new elementary school on that current middle school site. Okay, so now we have two brand new builds, but not on sites where we're having school, if that makes sense. And then phase three would be, let's take a look at those renovations over at Hilltop, and then finally abate and demo CH Camp. Okay, so I laid those phases out. The board didn't really talk about phasing, but in order to do what they're chatting about, that's what it would have to look like moving forward. Okay. Along with that whole concept of let's don't build on a current site having school, this master plan reappears. Remember this one? This is our master plan B. Okay, that the board would like to talk about as well. Let's just put the K at Shields. Sounds familiar, right? Because we talked about that. Let's put that K at Shields, do some renovations at the high school, get some love in the Hilltop, okay, for the board administration there. Abate and demo the middle school in C.H. Campbell. And as you remember, we had that cost at about $103.7 million. Okay? So that is setting the stage for our discussion for tonight. Okay, so I'm going to turn on Mr. Campbell. Mr. Campbell's daughter's on that team, if you didn't know this. So, great man, partner. So, we're going to turn over to the board. We're going to let them have some discussion. And you guys got it.
Thank you, Mr. Knoll. I actually just, as a member of the Facilities Committee along with Mr. Smallwood, just wanted to make a couple comments. One, just to reinforce and thank each and every one of you for the body of work that we did collectively as a Facilities Committee. Because, full transparency, I've gotten some feedback personally or other board members that, why debate this, and it was a whole waste of time for everything we've done. And to that message, I want to reinforce that we looked at Plan A and liked Plan A because that was the majority of the vote. But as discussion came about, there was just concerns about the safety on building behind the current building and the active construction sites that will take place. So the debate came about, whether or not we can modify just certain aspects of Plan A. So it's not negating Plan A in any way, shape, or form. It's looking at Plan A and trying to see if there's an ability to tweak it or fine tune it to make sure that it's perfectly executed, because that's our job to make sure we do the due diligence piece to that. So I just kind of want to reinforce that from a messaging perspective, because if you think it was a waste of time, that's not the case at all. And we're looking at what the majority of this committee has selected. And I don't think the debate here is to create new plans. So Plan A is the model with, Plan B also is like the second one. So potentially just to have that discussion between those two. Mr. Smallwood, if you want to add.
Yeah, I mean, we heard everybody loud and clear. I think the most important thing were grade bands, right? K through 4, 5 through 8. That was kind of an important thing. And the idea of a neighborhood school, it's just thinking about the idea of trying to, I guess, use the term smash a building into the property, existing property in Wadsworth, had a little bit concerned. So it's just something we want to discuss. Certainly this is not a no approval from the board or anything like that. It's just, let's get together, let's have a conversation in a forum. Unfortunately, we have to have it in a board meeting forum. But let's have a discussion about this and see what you guys think and if there's some tweaking we can do to it.
My comments are the same. I was not able to sit on the board because of different procedures that we have to follow, so we have 2 board members who sat on the facilities committee. If I were to have sat on the committee, me, myself, I don't think I was 100% on board. I would have been 100% on board with any plan that was created at that time. They each had their own pros and cons. And I think for me, it would have come down to what's the best, what's the best out of what we have. But not sure that it's exactly what we need. So, and I was taking notes as I was getting feedback from the updates and things, and my biggest concern, again, was, I think more than anything, the site at the middle school and the property that was going to be designated for the new build. Just seemed like a smaller piece of property. That's why one, we would have to have gone 3 stories and get a variance from the city. And basically curbside school on Edward Street. And that also was concerning to me for our residents that lived on Edward Street. Doing a build there, Edward Street would almost have to be, I don't want to say shut down, but it would be a nightmare for residents and drop-off pickup for that time frame, which we're looking at almost a 2-year build. So just taking that all into consideration, that was my biggest concern in a safety perspective, that encompassed that.
And to that, when I read the room as being a part of this meeting, I think the message that was loud and clear was maintaining the grade bands to just a small business. So I didn't think it was necessarily a marriage to the actual sites. I do know that the middle school site is, an attractive site, so that's where the ideas that were thrown out, potentially maintaining that site, but then having it be K-4 would allow us to even look at partnerships down the road. Because I think, there's advocacy with community partnerships, but we also know that takes time. And so in doing it in this manner, could we potentially have a community partnership that would be allowed, and we could kind of build that through with an elementary school versus the original middle school idea. So those were the things that we started to debate. And I think they had merit to debate, but I also appreciated Mr. Capua and wanting to bring the collective group back together to make sure that we were aligned to, look at what the majority wants to do.
And I think this question of safety and building on these properties, I mean, the issue of can it be done? Sure, it can be done. The question is, should it be done? And if you think about the question of should it be done, and the fact that you've got, Mr. Small and I went out there and stood yesterday in the backyard of the middle school while school was going on. There were kids everywhere. There was activity everywhere. To think about shutting that down for 2 years, because that's effectively what you're doing, because there's no place, there's no place to put
There's
the
no
kids.
place to stage construction equipment other than the playground area and the track area.
That whole, we wouldn't be able to take kids outside, and it's not just there, it's also gonna happen in Hilltop. So you've got both of those schools for 2 years, those kids being essentially locked down for 2 years while we do that. So yeah, it's not a question of could it be done, because there's plenty of school districts that have done it. But there are other options that we have, and so the question then becomes, should it be done that way? And that's where this conversation has gone. I think that, when you look big picture, the options aren't great. Like, none of the options are really great. And so I think what we're trying to do is find something that works and that we can make work like that.
I agree. I kind of, if you saw the last board meeting, I spoke last, and I echo a lot of what colleagues up here echo. There's pros and cons to pretty much every option that we've explored and that you guys have explored. And I just want to thank everyone again. Everyone's hard work shows a lot of dedication and a lot of long nights and a lot of discussion. So I think we all realize that something needs to be done. It's what is it? And obviously sooner than later is better, but at the same time too, I don't think anything needs to be rushed either. And I've shared those comments as well. I mean, obviously we can't wait years upon years because that price is going to continue to go up, I would think, just based on what's going on out there. But at the same time, I don't feel like the decision needs to be made too long.
So I've heard a couple comments, and I should have mentioned this earlier, the 3-story at the middle school. I made a comment weeks ago that the city gave me their word verbally that they would make a variance or make an exception based on the code. Well, I know you appreciated that and took my word for it, but I asked the city to put a little something in writing, and I believe I have that tonight. So, Anthony, I appreciate that. I just wanted to make sure that, would you mind just looking at it real quick, just give us the 30-second view of it. Tell me what you got right there. Comment from you is important.
Okay. The majority of the City of Canfield council members write in support of a 3-story building at 100 Wadsworth Street. As representatives of the community, we understand the challenges the Board of Education faces trying to build a new building in the current location. The current middle school is close to a century old. Our community is growing in size and needs more space. The city zoning regulations do not allow a building for more than 35 feet in height without an adjustment from Planning and Zoning Commission. However, with the unusual hardship that would be caused to the Board of Education, Council would support this request upon Planning and Zoning's approval. And it's signed, respectfully yours, Mayor Donnie Dragish, John Morvay, President of Council, myself, a council member, and Chuck Tish as a council member.
You just need to have Mr. Prince there if you don't mind. You got the treasurer right beside you. Thank you. But I want to make sure I spoke on that tonight. Like I said, I wanted to clean that up for everybody. Well,
From the commission.
yeah, I think all those folks that serve in our committee, if you want to respond, that's fine. Yeah, that's the
We'll
invitation.
take questions from committee members at this time, because this is what we're doing.
Mayor Duffin, I saw you. Your hand up.
Yeah, I appreciate your comments about, the time we put in and coming to the resolution. But if we're to change it, then that was a waste of time. I don't know how you can do it any other different because we voted on everything. Sometimes when we voted, I didn't agree with it, but I said, that's what the body said. So we gotta go with that. Then we would hack it out, we would do all this talking for 3 months at all these tables, and we've talked about everything that could be talked about and then some, and hacked everything through. And I thought we had a good recommendation to the board. Naturally, it's a recommendation, and you guys got the final say on it. But it does feel like at this laid out, we're coming in, we're trying to change it. And there's a lot that I can speak negative about going to Shields Road. But one of them is, you talked about dealing with when you're gonna start that project. You're gonna have to jump through a lot of holes with ODOT. I can tell you that, for being mayor. And there are tons. To get a light there, to widen that out, traffic study, it's already very busy up there. Granted, our current middle school is a busy place, but the feedback that I heard as mayor when we tried to get Redgate going was, oh, it's way out there. Well, this is way out there. This is further out there. If we were to go from the middle school now and go to Redgate, you could make it quicker than you could the middle school, being at Shields Road with traffic. So that's a change here. So I just, think that, and I think the why is a very important factor that we should be putting the hammer down, because that's going to get these people who don't have kids in the system, who may have an interest in silver sneakers, may have an interest in the center of town being a Y. And I kept hearing from parents they love that middle school kids can go to the library, can go to Dairy Queen, and they're old enough to do that on their own. We put an elementary school there. They're not going to walk down there unaccompanied after school, an elementary age kid. So that kind of takes away from the center of city aspect of having a community school that you have with the existing. I've never heard now we're all of a sudden going away from the center of the community for the middle school. you know, that's just a new thing that really, we voted on and it got beat. It was close, but it got beat.
I mean, I'm just gonna, I don't know, I'm just gonna say I appreciate that feedback, and I don't think we're trying to take away from the partnerships. In my eyes, I think you saw the last committee meeting when we were asking for specifics and concrete information on partnerships. We knew it was gonna take some time to get to that point, and so I don't know if we'll be able to have a partnership agreement with a design created at the same time to get to that point. And so, in my eyes, if you did that a couple of years down the road, it allows us to work through that and potentially create a building and a concept that would have that partnership and that design created. So I hear what you're saying in regards to the middle school piece.
The delay of getting a joint partnership is significant because you have to, in the plan that was approved, build on the west end, wait till that's done, and then tear down, and then put the Y in. You're gonna have way up front ODOT delays. I can tell you that. You can't even change a traffic light without going through hell. We try to get sound, I could give you multiple examples of by the regulation, historically, and all that you're gonna have to deal with in Shields Road. Had we dealt with Shields Road prior to this, you could be further down the pipe, but you're starting from scratch if this would go to the November ballot. And then all of a sudden, now you gotta get all that stuff worked out before you even do the middle school. And I don't know how it's gonna work with all those kids at Campfield Baseball Club, tons. And they go from April all the way down to October because of fall ball. So you got that component of traffic. Then you got to throw on the middle school traffic, and you throw a 2-lane road, which is it right now without a light. There's a lot that's got to happen. That's going to be bureaucracy.
I was just going, I talked to Mr. Smallwood about a couple of things. I think going with the ODOT part two that's another, I believe the number you're giving by EDA.
Could you talk a little louder?
Sorry.
I can't hear you back here.
Going to these Shields Road property too, we were given the number $4.7 million to just do that ODOT betterment you're talking about, to round up to $5 million. That's a heck of an increase, and that's saying if that 4.7 is, that's just an estimate, that easily, working in construction and doing utility work, that can easily go up in cost. And being on the committee, when we voted for this version of A, the one thing that everyone was adamant about was we're going to do the 3 schools was the love of the middle school property, using that. That was like a hard decision, like everyone wanted that. I wasn't a big fan of it because I don't have any connection to it, but that was a big option. So just looking at that and the money purposes going to Shields Road, staying in Hilltop, one, I know we talked about not, a lot of people hearing at the public meeting, we did have a middle school, people didn't like the idea of a whole, like Mr. Knoll having a whole, like keeping all of Hilltop. I don't think that was ever the plan to put the superintendent and his staff using all of Hilltop. We were given a number by PBA, they had worked on it, adding enough office space and whatever other space Mr. Knoll needed to add to one of these new schools, which I thought was in 300, 400,000. I don't know if PBA has that number available.
That's right.
So
It's like $380,000.
$380,000. So why don't we add, I think the plan should be not, we're saying the schools are bad, not to keep Hilltop, you're maintaining it for how many people on your staff again, Mr. Knoll?
Well, we probably all, and probably all those.
12 of us for a school that holds like 800.
I remember my thought was we would invite community partners to join us in that building too. So that would just be my view.
We also talked about purchasing private property that was well received by the community or by the facilities committee, and we know what property that is. Look at that. Talk to Mr. Smallwood about the numbers. And then he has the numbers. I don't know if he's talking to Neil. board members about it, but there's $1 million to better the roads, we were told by the city, to build on Hilltop's property. It's about $5 million to just do the road work up at Shields Road. You have $4 million difference there to acquire a private property before you break even with the building at Shields Road. So we know what property is available, what we talked about. I don't see why we couldn't go to negotiations and get a hard number on the property that we were talking about in committee. To do that, you have the logistics and the math work out to do, at least attempt that option before you go and build on Shields Road and spend there's a $5 million check right off that's not even in that 104 number, I believe. So my thinking is at least approach that option. If that property has the availability to do that community partnership right off the bat, so then you could do either put the middle school or the elementary school there and still do your phased options. And then you have build the middle school there and then you build the elementary school and middle school property. I just think going to the Shields Road property, the big thing was, for me, is you're just writing a $5 million check right off the bat. It's not accounting for there. And that's saying that $5 million is the actual number. Like Mayor Duffy was saying, ODOT has its hoops to jump through, and that $5 million could just be the start of the money pit.
Chris, we had talked, and but I think the key point here to what you're talking about is that we have been essentially shut down from any opportunity to purchase any private property. I mean, we talked about the property adjacent, abutting Hilltop property. We were told no. I personally.
We were told no at 2 times the highest price that anybody's paid for undeveloped property in Canada.
And
2x.
while the meetings were going on here, during the facilities meeting, committee meetings that we had, Mr. Knoll and I had a couple, 3 meetings, if you will. And the first meeting was just kind of a get to, hear our situation and think about it. The second meeting was, just kind of talk a little more. The third meeting was basically, we think that that's not a good decision for us. We being the seller, saying to us that we have other plans for the property. I mean, I don't know how to, pull blood from a turnip, if you will, but we worked really hard to try to get somewhere. And we knew the starting point was already, to Mr. Wilkins' point, higher than what maybe market value is, whatever that would be. But, I mean, if you're saying that, hey, it's okay to go spend another $4 or $5 million on a piece of property that's worth $1.5 million, is that a prudent thing for us as a board? Can I sleep at night knowing as a steward of our money that that's a good decision for us? And being honest with you, it's going to be hard for me to agree on something like that. Now, when that property's sitting there, and I recognize, of all the options we have, there really wasn't any good ones, okay? So I certainly understand your point, and to that, I would take that under consideration and think about maybe looking at that property again. But again, I feel like I've been told no. We have been told no twice. I just don't know.
Well, and I'd like to interject because, yes, there's a lot of hoops with ODOT, and I understand that, but the property that we're discussing is also on a state route. And that state route would also have to be ODOT approved. That road would have to be widened, and the light would also have to be put there. So there's, you know, I'm not saying it would cost as much as the Shields Road, but it's still a state route.
On Hilltop.
Municipality.
But I would assume if you did build on that piece of property that we're just all alluding to, you'd have to also build out that Shields space. You'd have to, or certain Hilltop, because you'd have to. I mean, when we've talked about that internally, that was our goal.
And ODOT maintains, even if it's within a municipality, it's still maintained, not maintained, it's still built by ODOT. They would come in. Most are.
I just wanted to say that I appreciate TDA coming in and providing a process for us to ground this work in. One of the pieces that I struggled with throughout the entire process was it seemed as though we were trying to do two things at once. We were always trying to look at location and various locations and various plans at the exact same time. The committee, even up to the final vote, was looking at multiple configurations, be it a K8, be it a K4 and a 5.8, or whatever the case may be. And I think that there's probably a lot of people similar to me that are thinking that I had a great configuration that I wanted to vote for, but I didn't like the location that it was tied to because that was determined way back at the initial planning phase of that. And we never really came back to say, this is the best grade configuration that we are going to go forward with until the very end of the process. Whereas if that decision would have been made early on in the process, this is the configuration we like, now where can we put this? And really focus on a second vote of where should this go. I'm not sure that the vote would have came out to put it at the middle school. A lot of the concerns that I have at that location are similar to the ones Ford expressed. Building while kids are trying to play, limiting the activities that they can do during that time, eliminating practice fields that are now going to have to be moved somewhere else and intruding on other athletics. There's a lot that would go into that. That being said, there was never really an option to go back and look at those individual sites once we decided upon which main plan we were looking at. That was one of the frustrations that I had throughout. I would have preferred to have a great configuration set up first, then look at what locations would work best for those locations. And I just appreciate the diligence that everybody's putting in from the beginning all the way to the end, including Board of Education, for looking at it and trying to see what is truly going to work for our children, not just in the interim, but long-term as well. So just thank you, everybody.
Just don't understand why everybody is so dead set against the Shields Road out there. It's wide open. There's plenty of space there for partnerships. In the near future, even down the road, it would be brand new. There's enough property to actually build more if you need to. There's definitely enough. And now they're worried about the baseball fields and stuff like that. That's not going to happen. It's just people who use the school parking lot to park baseball games instead of crowding all down there in the grass and dirt and stuff. Everybody seems to be stuck on this tradition of the middle school in the center of town. I just don't, I don't get it. I mean, why do you want to try and jam the school there on that small piece of property that he's talking about? Not think that the kids will be disrupted, the neighborhoods and the people who live in the area will be disrupted. I mean, Shields Road, there will be no disruptions from groundbreaking to finish. I just don't get it. I do not get why Canfield is hell-bent on the center of town. It's horrible.
It's a mile and a half.
Why would you want to do that? Why? Why?
We're not talking about not doing anything there, but just blank the property out and start fresh with an elementary kids. That was the suggestion that we were kind of talking about amongst ourselves. So it's not gonna not go unused. Still maintaining the respect of a grade band with K through 4. And so we're kind of speaking where we were kind of thinking.
And I think if that property is blank, it really changes the kind of dynamics of what you can do there, because, you know, we can't build on top of Wadsworth Street, but Wadsworth Street doesn't necessarily have to stay there either. In other words, it could become an easement across a parking lot or a driveway or something that wasn't necessarily a through street. I just think if you've got a blank piece of property there, it just changes how you would lay that out. If you do a Y, how that would fit in. You know, looking in the past at various schools that have done these partnerships, you know, they've used the same building for in a lot of these cases, meaning they've attached the building, so you don't have a Y and a school that you walk between. You have a building that has a Y and a school in it, and there's financial advantages to doing it.
But don't you think those partnerships would like a blank piece of property?
Exactly. Well, that's my point. Like,
And if they saw Shields Road and thought Shields Road was the best option for a partnership, wouldn't that benefit Campbell?
yeah, I don't know. I mean, I don't know whether they prefer Shields or down in the middle of town, or,
That was a clean slate.
But yes, you're right.
but either way, as opposed to trying to
How do
crush.
you see-
30 years down the road, nobody's going to care about.
Well, you're absolutely right. But they will care about a 3-story building that's crushed into the corner of a piece of property, and then you have all this odd stuff in the front. I just,
To be honest with you, I didn't think, and maybe I read the room wrong, but when I was a part of this, I thought the resounding message was keep the K through 4, keep the 5 through 8, and it wasn't necessarily marriage to the property. But to Mr. Lavery's point, maybe we had a configuration, but we didn't really pulse out if this was an absolute from a location perspective. So we're going to go there. I see it's here, you and then Joe.
So, like the mayor was saying, you know, we spent week after week in here hashing these issues out. None of the board issues are new, right? We addressed each one of those issues that you have up there. We talked about each one of those issues that you guys had. A lot of us had the same issues that you guys had up there, right? But as we whittled it down and whittled it down, as a group, we came up with that being the best issue, that being the best solution. There's a lot of issues with the Shields Road property. The amount of site preparation that goes into it. The road issue. I mean, we're talking about just the road. I mean, it's also been a farm property, which means you have to bring in soil and do extra site preparation to get to work. And on top of that, we wanted to keep the grade bands. Well, that's K through 8 school out there. If you break up the schools, I don't think it was going to work for the levy of it. Right, so as we're sitting here right now, rehashing 8 weeks worth of work, it's going to be difficult to explain to you exactly how we came to that point. 2 of you sat there and went through the same thing we did, right? So you guys should understand how we got to the point you're here right now. But at the end of the day, that's what the group came up with as the best solution. It's not the perfect solution. There is no perfect solution. But it's the lesser of the evils.
what is it? That's the question. Because in my
According
mind,
to
it's
us,
not.
yes.
And to your point, we weren't able to ever sit down, the 5 of us, to be able to get to that point. So that's why the board meeting was the first exposure to all 5 hearing this and being able to kind of debate it. And then that's where the request came for this meeting, so that we could do it.
When you say what is it, according to us and the 8-9 weeks worth of work we put into it, yeah, it's the lesser of the evils. Now, if you guys choose differently, but that's what we said.
I just want to start with reminding everybody when we had the.
Can you speak up, please? We can't hear you
Yeah,
back.
okay.
Thank
I
you.
just want to remind everybody about when we had the public open house. And at that point, we were talking A, B, and C. And that was really where we as a group collectively were led to believe, you know, we were going to try to narrow it down from there. To even talk about Shields is really going to be a waste of time. The only reason why I'm saying that is when we public was present, there was next to no votes for Plan B, which incorporated Shields. So if I took that, aside from all of the other concerns, which so many of us share, you know, there is no perfect plan, trying to hang on to certain people's memories and where kids can walk to. But if you put a vote out there that incorporates Shields for all the negative reasons that we know, plus already knowing that the public feedback was like next to nothing, they did not want it. So if you incorporate Shields, expect it to fail. That's what I take out of that. The next thing is, when we had our very last meeting, and I don't mean to sound aggravated, but it was aggravating for probably most of us. I don't think most of us thought we were coming back in here for that last meeting to have 6 plans to look at, when the public already told us they didn't want B. Then there's all this time we spent, you know, and now here we are, here's 3 more to throw into it. So instead of having this kind of conversation where we could say, hey, you know, let's compromise, let's tweak, let's really narrow down A and C and rethink more of the pros and cons with A and C. But no, we had B, D, E, and F, okay? So there is that. And then we also have to think about needs versus wants. Trying to be good stewards, but at the same time, we all want something. We can't have everything we want in life or with the school situation. So what do we need? And we have to do our due diligence in trying to get those votes to get something through. And that means a community center, a Y, and the absolute best place for that is the middle school location. Maybe thinking a little bit more outside the box, and with this gentleman here too. I went home after a couple of meetings, it's like, when did we ever discuss using the existing Hilltop building as just for the administration? I mean, they could be incorporated, as we were all discussing with all these plans, into either of the school locations. They don't need their own complete structure. So now, let's think a little bit more outside the box, and before anybody gets really uncomfortable with it, if you look at the building perspective from the design area, one of the things that TDA was explaining to us, which I understood, was you have less of the property to build on, which exists now that we own in Hilltop, if you're trying to maintain the existing school. What could they tell us could really be built there if Hilltop got leveled? And now you have your blank slate there. Could we then go up to grade 8 if people still didn't want to switch 7 and 8 over to the high school? Would there then be a viable piece of property to put K through 8 there? It's just a
But where do you
question.
put the kids? You level
I
the
I understand that. So you've already.
If you were saying 5 through 8, I think I'd be understanding what you're saying, but K through 8, how does that even happen without displacing kids?
Well, again, this is where we would have to have talks and see, is something viable?
Well, I mean, we've talked about that. We've kind of already been there, already went over that, but there is no
Renting
bylaw.
property.
Okay, but is the idea that we're just so adamant about trailers? Are we adamant about, there are school
Never vote
systems?
I mean, you're trying to pass a law. If you told me my kid was gonna be in a trailer, I would say
Okay,
no.
but let's just, I didn't say this was gonna be comfortable, but I've been trying to think of all different possibilities to have a better end result. Do you do something where, we had a research living in Missouri once, and they did something there where certain grades went to school certain days of the week. And, you know, they did something like that. And then the other days they were, now, because of COVID, you do the online. I'm not saying it's great, I'm just trying to be creative here.
No, I'm just saying, we don't want their academics to suffer while we're building.
I
And again, can we, should we, is the other side of it.
And the message we were trying to do was not displace kids. There really doesn't appear to be any real needs to be comfortable for anybody to do what you're saying. Obviously, if you could level the middle school property and displace those kids temporarily and put a new middle school there, great. I'd love to figure it out, but I don't think it's even
I'm not
possible.
even in favor
Okay.
of actually putting a middle school back there.
Well, but I mean, again, that's what I'm kind of hearing is we want a middle school there. So I have to go with that. You know, I'm not here on my own agenda trying to figure out something that, you know, I think is what I want. I'm trying to take what is being thrown at me. Being on that facilities committee, we were all over the board and trying to understand how we can do what, you know, sometimes when we get into these forums, we tend to kind of talk a lot. And that's what it's about, to foster conversation and discussion. But when you really start to really put real plans in place and really think real life scenario, go walk the property. I don't know how many people walk that property over there at middle school, okay?
While kids are there.
While kids are there, walking
Several
around
times.
and everything, okay? I mean, when you really do that, and you know, Mayor, I have a lot of respect for you, so this is not a negative, but I mean, if you really sit there and you look at all that, what's going on, I mean, can you seriously say that I think we could do this in a safe manner? The kids are going to be able to maintain what, like Mr. Lavery was saying, I value his opinion. He's a teacher. He's around all these kids. And you know, when I see all that going on, and I'm out there and I'm like, geez, this is really going to be something. So it's hard to do. So again, we're trying to come up with the best solution. And one of the things we wanted to talk about was reconsidering that Shields Road property.
And I just want to say again, we are looking at Plan A and trying to maintain the integrity of Plan A to the best of our ability, but taking those things into account. I mean, my kid, I have a kid in middle school, they love their recess. He's athletic and has, you know, practices in the back. You take all that away and try to figure out what that's going to look like, that becomes very complicated for everybody. But, you know, so that's why we're trying to have this. And Jill's been patiently waiting.
So, you know, I go back to what many people were saying. I do feel like the committee has made a recommendation to the board. We represent the community. And just as I felt like the first roundabout, I'm sorry to say this, I'm trying to say it in the nicest possible way to our school board members, because I appreciate the work that all of you do. But you're not listening to the community. You didn't listen to the community the first time. You brought people back together. You didn't listen to, now you're not listening to the community the second time. That you're setting up our levy for failure from the get-go. You know, I personally was not a fan of any of the three options that we had, but I do believe in a process, and this is what the committee came up with. I personally think that the amount of money is way too much. I don't think we will pass a levy for that kind of money in this community right now. You know, so at the end of the day, you have to listen to the community. You know, you have to listen to us. And one of my questions that I have about what your thoughts are about Plan A is I was concerned because I thought that we couldn't do things in phases. That if we did that, we would have to have a bond levy for phase 1 and then go back to the voters for phase 2. Is that correct? We can get all the money up front at one time?
You're talking about
We're talking about
segmenting?
segmentation.
Yes. So is that,
Segmenting is meant to get it so that the cost of the bond is cheaper. When you try to pass that, then you go back and you go 10 years later, 5 years later, whatever it is, go back to the voters and go, hey, by the way, remember we talked about this 10 years ago, now we're ready, and convince them when they're still under the bond from the first one that they need to pass the second
but
one.
I didn't think we could pass the bond levy to say we're gonna build a new elementary building when we're not gonna build it, we're not even gonna start looking at it for 3 years down the road. Is that, so we can pass a bond levy even though we're not gonna even, so we're gonna start collecting money from people for a project that we're not even gonna do until 3 years down the road.
Is that correct?
Is that correct on TPA, Cheryl?
Well, I think what we expressed was that we had to check with legal counsel on that.
Now, I was under the assumption, we asked that question, and I was under the assumption that you gave us that answer that you didn't think we could.
I think the original question was pointed about the process with the OFCC. Not necessarily is this black and white question like that. But again, I really believe the initial comment was that we would have to confirm with council.
And are we still at that point where we have to confirm with legal counsel, or have you already done that?
The answer is done.
It is?
The answer has been received.
Okay.
And the answer is, you could ask for a $104 million project and only do one piece of that to start. And then wait 3 years. So let's say you do your middle school first. You have a $104 million bond that gets passed, so we do the middle school first. Okay, 3 years or so, you could build the elementary school back from behind it. You can do it.
I just go back to my main point was, you need to listen to the community. And at the end of the day, it is not what you want, it is what the majority of the community wants.
Can I just comment on that? Because I received 2 personal messages from people that live on Edward Street. Irate about hearing about an option of 3 stories. Okay, so if you're telling me I have to listen to the community, I was listening to them. Okay, and I think that's an important thing too. It's not just what's in here, it's, these people aren't coming to the meeting.
Yeah,
And they're
that-
also saying
that is
something.
exactly
So
the point.
I respect everything you're saying, Joe, I do. And I can't thank you enough for being part of this, because obviously this is, you know, this is, I guess, fun, but it's not fun, right? You know, we're trying to figure something out that's gonna be, we're gonna be judged on for the next 50 years.
You
So,
have to figure out what the majority of the community wants, because then that will be what you get, how you get the majority of the
the
community.
comment to
vote.
me was, I'm going to sue the district if you do anything, okay? I don't know if that's valid or not. Okay?
So you're
but-
operating under a threat? I mean, you're-
Well, I'm just saying that's what you have, but they're a community member just like you, so I have to listen to them just like you.
I think the bigger consideration is the fact that it took you guys 8 weeks of listening to this to essentially swallow whatever and say, this is the best we got. Well, all of these people in the community have not sat through this. It's the same thing as last time. I mean, you guys accused us of all kinds of stuff. We had sat through years of meetings prior to that. And then we came and you said, well, you just unilaterally made that decision. We didn't unilaterally make these decisions. We had committee members, we had community members. We followed a similar process to where we got there. The problem is that whatever plan we put forward, nobody has the benefit, no matter how much information we put out on websites and Facebook and we talk about and all these things, they don't have this information. And they don't want to know it. Like, they want the little soundbite that we're going to get on the TV tonight, right? They want the little tiny sentence, and that's the problem. So when you say, we don't like any of these 3 plans, but we took the best of the worst or whatever, okay? How do you think, I mean, that's not what, the community's not necessarily going to vote for that any more than they're going to vote for this. So, I mean,
I think we're definitely listening and trying to listen to the community. We're listening to this. I mean, so the listening piece is happening. I mean, you even said it. You're not a fan of any of the 3 plans. So if it was Plan A intact, you know, I know I've asked a few people if they would support it that were on this committee, and the answer was no. So that, you know, there's going to still be dissent amongst the community, amongst people that maybe from this community that their plan didn't rise to the top. And I know that. It's a known fact because it's been acknowledged. So we're trying to do the best at listening, but do our due diligence to make sure that every community member is represented in the student safety and the staff and the administration, everyone is, you know, taken into
Just one last
consideration.
comment though, you said, I asked you specifically, Mr. Atway, that if you thought that a $104 million levy would pass in this community, and you, at that time, did not believe that, you thought we would have a hard time with that.
Oh, no,
So
I still
again,
think we have a hard time with
that is-
$104 million.
you are-
We have to educate the community as to
you
why
are
we
right
got to
back
that
to
point.
not listening to the community.
Yeah, but the idea of, the problem is that we for 25 years have kicked this can down the road, and now we have no more road. I mean, I don't know how many times I can say that. We have no more road. We can't go, well, let's just tear the middle, I've heard it a million times. We'll vote for a middle school, let's just tear that thing down and move on. We still have this mess at CH. And I don't think that if we pass that, we're gonna come back and pass an operating levy, because that's gonna need to be done, and and then turn around and then pass a bond levy to replace CH and get any of that to work over the course of 10 years. I just don't think it's gonna
Councilman
happen.
Navarado and Stacy.
I got a couple things. First of all, I do have to agree with you that I think that it's going to be impossible to do. In spite of the buildings we have, our students have done more. But 3 years ago, your board came in front of the city when we were when we were going to offer a tax abatement for new construction residential in the city. Your board came to us, city council, and said, you can't do that, it'll destroy the schools. And upon that recommendation, we did not do that. We voted against any tax abatement on new residential construction. Now you want to turn around and take tax money out of our pockets by going to Shields Road. Now, has anybody taken into consideration, you have right now the best police department in the surrounding area that covers your schools. You move that middle school to Shields Road, you're not going to have Canfield Police in one of your buildings. You're going to have to go to the Sheriff's Department. Nothing against the Sheriff's Department, nothing against Jerry Green and his men. They're fantastic. But you won't have any consistency when it comes to your SROs academy.
So as I mentioned though, you and I have talked about, I think there's a very strong possibility to get a jet.
I
arranged.
very much doubt that, to be
So
honest
that we
with you,
can-
dealing with
So we can make
some
this-
aspects of the township. I don't think we'll get a jet.
If enough-
I would be
if
all
enough community
for
members
sitting
want
with
it.
them to come up with a jet that would work for both parties and both interests for all, to the best of all concerned. You know, one thing I feel, one thing this community has to remember, you have a township, you have a city, but ultimately, we are Canfield. We have to start acting as one community, working together as one community, and doing what's best for Canfield as a whole, whether you're township or whether you're city.
Can't agree with you more there.
But these are the issues we're facing. You don't have city water out on Shields Road, and you don't have city sewer on Shields Road. We have to make those adjustments. That all was not figured into a plan to go out there. So, take into the idea of putting sewage out there.
There is-
I know what we put on putting water and sewage out to Red Gate, and what the options are out there, and what the costs are. So there's going to be those issues that need to come up with the Shields Road.
Sanitary and water are already
It's part of the jet, is that part of has to be the
No,
city's
only
It
for
depends on how
annexation.
that jet's written.
Annexation, which is not, I don't support annexation.
But there again, I go back to, we went to you guys came to us and said, don't do 100% tax abatement on new construction. We said, okay, we'll deal with you and won't do it. And now you're turning around and doing it to us. That's the city.
Well, Anthony, just a couple quick things. On the Shields Road property, the water and sewer costs were figured in on that dollar amount, because there's water that can come down from the north, do not think Chad about that, and sewer as well. And if the board does decide to move forward with that property, I have been directed to gather people like you together, to sit down and try to come up with an agreement that does support your theme, which was my theme this school year, as you all know, that we are Canfield. Okay? So if it comes to play, I'm going to be the one to try to get all that done. Okay?
Mr. Madison.
I mean, you just said about coming together as one, right? Township, city, working together. I mean, why couldn't that happen out there? Why can't?
I would love to see it happen,
Okay, so
but historically it hasn't.
That's really.
And I don't
the
see it
gist.
moving forward to happen. Historically, it hasn't, and I don't see it moving forward. I have, in the 4 years that I have been on council, I have tried to get this township and the city working together, and they're at odds. The leaderships tend to be at odds.
We're not talking annexation, we're talking about essentially a sharing agreement to make the city whole in terms of the income tax and the SRO situation. And spurred by the school as opposed to the city or the township trying to get something out of it.
Well, like I
So,
said,
I agree.
I'll work with you. I really will. I'll work with you. But I just wanted to
I
bring
think the
those up.
township will too, we've talked to the township.
Mr. Madison?
Yeah, I have a number of thoughts, and I don't know if I can remember them all through all this discussion. You know, the superintendent did a great job through all the meetings. He reminded us over and over again that we're going to come up with a recommendation, but you were going to make the decision. He said that. Everybody knew that. And that's where we're at right now. I would not be offended in the least if you decided to do something other than Plan A. You know, only 48% of our committee voted for Plan A. I don't have a calculator, but that means like what, 52% voted against Plan A, yes? So we didn't give you like this overwhelming mandate, you have to do this. We did. There was a lot of disagreement all the way through. At one point, when we were narrowing down the options from like 11, at one point, Shields Road was the top vote, you know, at one point. So there wasn't a lot of opposition to going out to Shields Road. There just wasn't at any point in time. And I think at that point in time, maybe we were discussing the K to 8 on Shields Road at that point in time. I am very happy that you're asking the questions that you're asking. I want you, I think it's your responsibility to think about the things you're thinking about. Safety, inconvenience, what things look like in the long term, like a 3-story building. I wouldn't want to live on Edward Street, walk out and have this 3-story building along that chain link fence area. I wouldn't. So I think you really, and nobody's mentioned the fact that, and I think, you know, not to be critical of TDA at all, but they need to tell you guys that it's not feasible. If it's not feasible. If it's not, that's another thing. We need to make sure that we differentiate between opinion, people saying, well, I think that would be, and fact. I think TDA can help with that. Can we build a middle school on the football field? Is it feasible with taking care of the stormwater? Where's that going to go? Those types of things, I believe you can get some data on, some hardcore data. I know you guys stood on the field, you watched the kids run around, but you know, is it feasible to build a school there? I think TDA can answer that question. And then we wouldn't be having this discussion. We really wouldn't, because we have professionals who do this every day telling you that, hey, the area's too small.
Well, they essentially did that, though.
What's that?
They essentially did that, I think. They just told us that it'd be 3 stories.
Yeah, I agree.
So, I mean, yeah, I mean, is it doable? I mean, but you raise a lot of great points, and, you know, I can't, you know, I agree with you 100%. Where I sit, I have to be thinking about all those things, because we just throw out, well, we could do this. Sure. But now sit there and really think about what we're trying to do, and imagine you're living on that street.
Right, I know. I'd like to just opportunity to make just one more point.
Sure.
If we did use the Shields Road property, I'm not 100% sure that the school would be responsible for $4 million or more in road renovations out there. I just, you know, I know that, you know, there's been a political move to provide money to the campus schools for a new middle school. I don't know if the number was 38 million or something like that. And I don't know if that'll become a reality, but I would imagine that money to do the upgrades on the state routes out there would become a reality. And we may not be responsible for the.
That's a very good thought. I didn't even think about that.
And I've never worked with ODOT. You have, and I respect you, but I think that, you know, maybe it wouldn't be as bad as, we need to check it out and make sure we know.
Trying to get us
You
5
know,
million.
we need to check it out. But if we did a middle school on Shields, in a way, that buys us time to see if we could formulate some sort of partnership with the YMCA. You know, their funding and the amount of time that takes for that to come through. And then maybe when we build the elementary in the center of town here, we can have a partnership in place at that time with the YMCA. So that's just how, at this point in time, what I've kind of described, I see as the best scenario. And that's just an opinion. Thanks for listening.
I just want to circle back to Jill for a second, because she raised a good point. don't disagree with that. The reason why I personally have been a fan of, I mean, could we go and say, hey, we're gonna build a new middle school and get that passed? There's a very good possibility, 47, 50 million could happen, right? I mean, it's a lot different number, maybe it could happen. But when I think about the long term, and I think about the way we're seeing these numbers change on building costs due to the inflationary effect and things like that, when you go out 10 years and think about building then a elementary school, okay, 10 years later, you know, the numbers are just as astronomical. So if I could educate the public, the community, if we could all, like Anthony said, we are Campfield, we are one. We need to be working together, township, city, the no's, the yeses, all together, knowing that, listen, this is a give and take. It's, you know, you want this and you want this and he wants that, but we can all work together and come up with a plan that might not be perfect for everybody, but perfect for the city of Campfield. And maybe we could educate and we could get something passed. And if it's 104 million, great, we get it done and we can get it all done. But to sit there and segment it, to me, I'm gonna go back out for a levy even bigger than what we're looking at now if we segment it. That's how I feel. So, yeah, I could say, sure, let's segment it and let's do one piece of the puzzle, but, you know, optimistically, I'm trying to think that this group, everybody, not this group alone, I mean, there's, you know, just a big community, can come together and see the value of taking care of this today. So that's, I just wanted to make sure.
I'm not saying segment it, by the way. That was not my comment.
You're phasing it. To me, that's segment.
No, that's not what I was saying.
Building in phases.
That's not
But
what
you're
I-
looking, you're not passing a levy for 104 million.
Correct, yeah.
Okay,
But I'm not talking
that's
about-
segmented.
You say whatever, that's not
Okay,
what I said.
well, explain to me how it's not.
What do you,
You were just asking, I think you were just,
I was
you were asking
asking-
the question about if we could do what we were saying.
Yes, I was asking a question
She was
about,
asking us.
can we pass a levy for
Yes, I
104 million?
know that, but originally, but you
Says
always.
too much.
I'm just going back to your original.
It's our economy right now, it has nothing to do with what we're building, whether
Yep.
it's where it's gonna be built at. People don't have the money. They don't have the money, they're going to build it.
so do nothing,
Simple as that.
do
But
nothing.
that's gonna be 5 years ago,
Correct.
2
I'm
years
not
from
disagreeing
now.
with you on that. I'm
I
not
mean,
disagreeing with you on that.
the math is pretty simple.
Yeah,
You
I
look at
agree.
the
But that's not what
total.
I was not saying that
I know what you were saying about the 104 phases, and I get that in your
Just wanted to
question.
clarify.
But I'm saying, what I hear from various, you know, Kevin mentioned it, and other people during those meetings, was you're not gonna be able to pass it. Listen to the community. The community can't afford 104 million. So you're talking essentially phasing it by levies and segmenting it and coming to a vote for 50 million now, and God knows what the number would be.
And I think it was my turn next. Anyway,
Yeah.
this is the topic. And that's what I was gonna, I totally get, overall, the cost now is the more cost effective, 100%. I think the only way, I don't see Shields, me personally, I'm not a huge fan, but if, like, we're gonna do, you gotta do something so I can rally, but, adding a bunch of costs to already a cost that people think are insane, I think is not gonna pass. And unless you're gonna be going, I mean, really, every single one of you, I get that you're not allowed to sell or survey or whatever, but you said you're allowed to educate. Unless you're gonna get out there, I mean, really out there, and maybe ask the community to go, does anyone could do a drawing? Could anyone have a computer and willing to donate this to us? I don't know what's allowed or not. To really get people to see, get on board somehow, but again, at the end of the day, if you can't afford it, like right now, taxes and insurance just went up. So a lot of us are mortgage payments, if they're rolled in, which I know my generation's all about that, have gone up. You know, and now you're gonna put this ask, a lot of people aren't getting to the nitty gritty. They're looking at it and going, you asked this last time, and now you're coming back like I'm offended. No. You know, and that's what I'm hearing. I haven't heard a lot of negative about the 3-story building. I think if you guys really want to do that, I would swing it back to safety and go, if the classrooms are on the 2, that's safer than the ground floor, somebody can argue the fire. I mean, I think that's a whole different debate, but, you know, I haven't really heard a lot of negative on 3-story buildings like everyone's seen, here. I haven't heard it out there. What I'm hearing is cost, cost, cost. I think of middle school, and I know nobody wants to hear this, with completely passed. I think the community is definitely aware the middle school is bad. I think a lot of them, either they want to turn their head or not understanding CH. But the middle school, they have swallowed, like we're ready. And even though it's cost effective, if you can't afford it, you can't afford it. It doesn't matter. This is a better plan. If you get a puppy and you're really on a tight schedule, an adult dog, take a rescue when they're not growing still. I can't do 6 months supply if I have to do the 1 month because I just don't have it. And I think that's what people are looking at. Is I would love to do this and not feel this cost and start to think about everything else with the dog. I just can't. And it's like every plan we've come up with, I've said this, every talk and they're great, but they're all that cost where the seniors are feeling like, why do I have to move? There's something with Social Security, I don't know, I got tuned out with my parents, but there's something going on with Social Security, like they're all worried, and now here comes this levy. And then other people, like our bills are going up everywhere. So I know I'm repeating. And it's like nobody wants to actually hear that. It's like, but it's gonna be more expensive in the long well, yes, you're 100%. But people are like, right now, like I can't. So give me bare min and let's see what we can actually pull through. And
This
it's
is
hard to
bare.
Tim, I don't think we disagree with you at all. I think everything you said is, it's absolutely on point. And I mean, you look at Poland, they're going to the ballot with a similar amount. To my answer to Jill, I know 104 million is going to be a lot of money, but it's about educating the majority of people to get the buy-in for those, if the majority of the community can vote yes and understand the why, we know there's going to be a lot of people that vote no because fixed incomes, if they just can't afford it, we can accept that, but we're going to
shields
try.
be more expensive. Now you're adding to the cost. And it's like, this is already an uphill battle, and now we're going to make it even more money. They're going to think, what are you guys doing? You guys go to the meetings and just think there's money falling off trees, like, and you come up with a more expensive number, like, this is feedback that I get. And then I start to feel like that's where it starts to feel like I'm wasting my time.
The
Because I brought
problem
up,
is that the board has been put in this position. We're the ones that now are the stewards of a district with 2 failed buildings. And it's happened because I've been on a board for 8 years. I have heard what you said from board members over and over and over again. I've seen the comments on Facebook about, well, why didn't the school board fix it? The comments you're making right now are the reason that no one went out and tried to get a bigger PI levy, because operating a levy after operating a levy failed. In the 90s.
I've only really commented on Redgate, and this one I've been pretty quiet about. I put the information out and kind of waited.
Whoever commented.
So for me, it was Redgate, I was against it.
In the 90s, there was a $30 million bond that was put up. The idea was to start moving
Yes, I heard that from
people
my
out of the
father.
middle school. It failed miserably. The school board came back together and they said, and I think they got a committee together and whatever, and they said, you know what, we're just gonna Band-Aid everything. And so they went out and they Band-Aided all 4 buildings.
Wait, the
And
high
now-
school you think was mandated?
Absolutely.
In the 90s?
100%. 100%.
They closed the courtyards or something major construction done. I was.
There's Band-Aids all over this.
Some of those buildings are 23 years young.
I mean.
I do
something
want to,
very
before we
major.
leave here tonight,
These
I
taxes
do want to
went up
address you about
$500.
kicking the can down the road. And I want it to be done in open session. Because that kicking the can down the road is an insult to me, my generation. A lot of you people weren't around in 95. And in 95, it's just what he said. We tried to do what to the middle school? Build a new one. We tried round 1 like they tried round 1 last year. And it failed miserably. So we didn't go back to the tables, pound our head against the wall and say, we're going to try the same thing again. That's what we're doing.
You kicked the can down the road, didn't you?
We had 5 buildings
Down the road, and now it's our left.
You're gonna do it again. I'm telling you, this is gonna fail, and you're gonna do it again.
Well, we're gonna
There's
have
gonna
to
be
keep
nothing.
trying, Dennis,
There's
over
gonna be
and over
nothing.
again, because this is
So
what
what we did in 95, we had 5 buildings, which included the bus garage. We addressed all 5. Hilltop was 23 years old at the time. What were we supposed to do to Hilltop, 23-year-old building? CH was 35 years old. This was a few more years older than that. There wasn't a whole lot of can to kick down the road, but they wouldn't budge on middle school.
That's not
So
true.
we had growing enrollment. We had growing enrollment at the time of the elementary. We had to add 11 classrooms onto the CH to accommodate the growing enrollment. We did that. We did this in 95. We added a gym and whatever there, media center over there. Fixed these other 2 buildings somewhat. We didn't. That's an insult to me because we paid that
Well, the taxes went up.
bond levy off. in 2013 before it should have been paid. We've gone through, my generation's gone through that. And last time, and I was brutally interrupted when I tried to deliver this last time by a board member, it's time to pass the baton. But I'm telling you, the same thing is going to occur. When you see 104 without the 7.2 million to go out to Schultz Road, you're talking $111 million. The biggest reason why the levy's going to fail is they look at the dollar amount. They look at the millage. They don't look at the details. They don't care what you're going to do with that money. They look at those numbers and that's it. They kill it right there. This is a done deal. If this goes out there, I can guarantee you, and I'll zip it up tight. I'll zip it up tight. It's finished on its own. It's never going to happen. And I'm not a pessimist, I'm a realist. It's not going to pass. Unless you segment it down where you take and only build one building. And pay.
The first one doesn't pass. That's not passing.
Well, if you put this all together
Well, yeah.
and sell it as a package, it's 111.
But you have to roll the dice. Like, I agree with you. I don't think it looks good to pass a couple years later. But getting it all right now in this world today, if people are not saying
25 years later,
we're already no happy.
it's the same conversation.
Fine. Okay, so we're gonna spend hours here if we continue this. A lot of us were here all the sessions, some of the sessions. It doesn't matter how many hours we spend in this room, it was a lot. Some were calmer than others, some were very heated, and we are all, including you, extremely passionate about doing something to further improve our K-12 schools. Nobody here disagrees. So we knew, as it was said, Mr. Knoll said, this is going to be offered to the board. It's ultimately your decision. I guess my question is, we're here. We are doing this because you requested it, which I am very thankful for you including us in this, hopefully, final step. Mr. Campbell made a comment about, maybe it doesn't need to be done in November. That kind of bothered me because I don't think that we should wait further. I think it needs to be done. And Mr. Knoll can give us the dates of when things have to be put on and what are the dates to get it onto that ballot. But I guess my final question is, what is your idea then? So we put our plans out, we offered it to you. If it isn't exactly what you want and we want to adjust it, are you allowed to share with us? Because we'll be here for hours, we'll be here for days, we'll be here for weeks. Like, are you allowed? I don't know what the rules are. Are you allowed to just share with us? What is your plan?
Right here, on the screen.
Yeah, it was the one, yeah.
Hybrid A.
Back up on the slide.
So that is specifically what you would like to see. So have you done the numbers of moving it to Shields? Because we did, as it was said, talked about the extra $5 million. That goes above the cap of 109 or whatever it is, right? What?
So if we take, with the interest rates the way they are, our treasurer has worked with the legal team to kind of figure this out. We can do 105 million. We can put because the interest rates are currently 5%, we can put the $105 million in the bank, yields of 5%. Those drawdowns, because it's going to sit in the bank, those drawdowns are generating at the outset around 460,000 a month. So there is a scenario, if interest rates hold, that we could actually pay the 118 on a 105 bond. What we would do is we would hold back some of the high school renovation money and not do those renovations or repairs initially to make sure that we had essentially a cushion in case something did go wrong with the interest rates. But there is a scenario, a financial scenario of essentially banking this money and collecting that interest to make a 118 number work.
So then what are we looking to accomplish? If that's the plan, we're presenting something to the board, it wasn't voted on, I guess. We've all talked about all of these comments, questions, concerns, everything you are addressing, every question, comment, concern you have, we've done.
I think it's
And
great.
so I guess I really enjoy the process, but I am finding myself becoming frustrated because we're saying the same things. We're all saying the same things here for an hour and a half. So what is the next step and how do we draw the line and then just move on?
I think
Because we need to decide something.
the goal of this meeting, so to Mr. Madison's point, if this was an 80% or 90% vote on Plan A, I don't think this debate would be as intense and as divisive as it is. I think the goal was to come back here, understand the pulse of the facilities committee, to see if Plan A was a marriage to both the sites and the building concept, or just the building, like if there was an appetite to be able to do what this looks like and still have support. Because to everybody's point that said, you know, we won't support this, but this is a waste of time, we would want to make sure that there would still be alignment with the committee to be able to go forward and say, we heard the debates, we heard the concerns of the board, we understand what their concerns are, and this is kind of why we want to go this route. So it's really looking at the pulse of the room. I mean, I don't even know if we can do like that.
I guess another concern is if we do phase one at Shield Road, because when we were talking about this, there was the discussion, and I don't know that it was final, of construction at both places at the same time. So if we do phase one at Shields Road, and then phase two does not start for several years later, what happens to the price? Does the price stay at what it is now, or is it going to increase 3 to 4 years from now, or from when it started?
That was what Mr. Wilkerson was talking about. If we pause the elementary build, those building costs, that's going to go up each year. Now, remember, we ended up like a 4.7 something, we're kind of blessed this year, but every year we don't build, those costs are going up. So to Mr. Wilkerson's point, by having these bond dollars making interest, we're hoping to kind of break even on that delay of the bill.
So the 118 number, is that going to be presented to the public? Because that would never.
No, it would be 105. But the cost is going to end up being 118.
Right, and I understand that, I just am trying to get all of this, and when do we end? Like, how many times do we go with the concerns, when do we end it?
Does that account for?
Yes, it does, plus the additional cost 3 years later, if you want to say abate.
What does that account for the physical cost? You're gonna have to maintain CH Campbell for another 4 or 5
No,
years.
the bond dollars wouldn't be for that, we use PI money.
So what happens when something major happens to CH Campbell?
We use PI money.
Different than it is today.
Yes, same scenario.
Hey, wait a minute, who's saying that we can't do it? So, because I specifically brought that question up. You remember when I brought that question up, because you want to tell me if we can do it?
Yeah,
Right?
I remember you brought it up.
They said they do that, the architecture firm said they could do it too. I said, how are we gonna do these all at once? And I was told in this room that it could be done. Plan A could be done as is. And I was also told it could be done safely. Because they said it's a, hold on now. I was told in this room that we could do it. So the question that you guys are asking, can it be done safely? And can it be done simultaneously? Was already answered in this room. And the answer was yes.
I mean, this goes to the point we're trying to
Just
make.
because you, no,
Just
the
because you
architecture
heard
firm
in
said
this
they could
room
do it.
doesn't make it.
So why are we questioning it?
Do you think that, let me ask you this, do you think that fourth grade parents whose kids are going in and are gonna spend 2 years without any outside recess are gonna vote yes?
My question is, why did we sit in this room, ask these questions, be told yes, vote on it, and now you guys are gonna come back and ask the same questions that the architecture firm already answered? They already said yes, they already said they can do it. And they said they can do it safely. What are we doing here?
That question of safety.
Because you had a reaction whenever I asked that question too, because I didn't think it could be done, but I was told it could.
I had a reaction.
Yeah, you were like, that's not, you said, you specifically said that seems like it'd be a cluster. I remember you saying it, because I asked the question, I got completely shut down whenever I asked that question. I was told that yes, they can do it.
Well, I mean, you weren't sitting at my table.
Could they be done
No.
versus should?
Right, I think TJ
That's
said it
what
could be
Could it
done.
be done?
Sure.
I have
So if it, wait,
confidence.
if it can't be done safely, then it can't be done. They said they can do it, so they can do it safely.
There's a risk, 100%.
There's always
What
gonna be a-
TBA
there's no
says,
perfect
everybody
plan.
else. You can't tell me, we were worried for 2 weeks, in the 2 weeks overlap, we out here did this field project. People lost sleep over the fact that for two weeks after school started, we had construction vehicles coming in and out of this property. That's all. Now we're talking about 2 years of kids, by the way, that aren't high schoolers, that are kindergartners and younger. I mean, no matter what, there's a risk.
There's always going to be a risk. This is going to be, and by the way, for everybody who's saying that, you were like, we're talking about we don't like the plans. I do like Plan A. I would like to see everything on Plan A done. As is. I like it. I think it's a good plan. I think it costs a lot. I think that's going to be a big hurdle. But I do like the plan. Okay? So I just want to put that out there. And no, 52% of people did not vote against Plan A. They just may have liked it a little better. Okay? That doesn't mean just because 52% didn't vote for Plan A doesn't mean they voted against it. All right? I think it's a good plan. We were told that we could do it. The majority of the group voted for it, or at least the biggest portion of the group voted for it. We're rehashing things that have already been answered here. All right, if you want to know the answer to these questions, go back and look at the 8 weeks of transcripts we have, because all of these questions you guys are asking have been answered.
Board, I tried to keep you till 7:30. Our meetings, we got about 3 minutes if you want to stick there. So throw it out there.
In the very beginning of this process, Mr. Knoll said, doing nothing is not an option. I gotta tell you, this has given me complete anxiety, all this. And you know why? We've said it a couple times, but we're one Canfield, right? If we can't even agree on one plan in this room, what's gonna happen out there? I want to take the pressure away from the board for a minute and look at you guys. Yeah, we worked hard. It wasn't a waste. We all wanted to be here. We had a choice to be here. I'm a little embarrassed that we can't come together. I don't feel like I'm Canfield right now. I really don't, and I'm sad about that. My plan was thrown out the window a long time ago. Every one of these people in this room has a different idea of what should happen, and everybody's an expert on how it should happen. But you know what? We need to put that aside. And you might not like the plan, but please don't go out those doors and not support the plan that's going to be chosen. If you don't like it, talk about something positive in that plan that you do like. Because you're right. If we go all out here and slam this plan, it's not going to work. We have to come together as a community, whether you like it or not. So please, I'm asking the facility committee, just support it. There's got to be one thing from this plan that you're going to like. Please support that and talk about that. Share it, Facebook, whatever. Can we all just be kind and not just be so aggressive about something that you don't like? So I just want to kind of put that out there, and let's all get along, and let's act like Canfield.
Can we do something informal? I mean, and I appreciate those comments, but let me ask you this, because it was a diluted vote, and if we just look at Plan A, can we just have like a hand vote of who wants Plan A intact and who's open to?
As it was presented.
As it was presented. Okay. And then Plan A revised, like, can we do that just to see?
No.
No?
We've done our job. I don't want to lend the imprimatur of this committee to your decision. It's your decision. Don't have us. I don't want you to be able to use us as a backstop for your decision, whatever it is. So I won't vote.
Fair enough. I wanted to ask if that would be something you'd entertain, but that's fair. Appreciate it.
I was just going to think about Jill's comment about she didn't like the original plan. I don't think anyone got exactly what they wanted. I think the frustration, we're talking about 52% didn't vote for it. I don't think my thinking is, it's not that we didn't get what we wanted, it's 15 or 100 ideas. Like Jill said, she swallowed her pride, she didn't like the plan. I was a two-school option person. I swallowed my pride. When we walked out those doors and voted on everything, I was gung-ho, I was going to support whatever the biggest majority was. And that was what was presented to the school district. So I think that's why I see a lot of heartburn being. A lot of people did do what the media doesn't allow, see that actually happens on a regular basis. People with completely different ideas, because I didn't agree with Jill's idea, I didn't agree with the 2-3 school option, but we all came to a consensus and said, okay, 48% of the people, wanted this option, we want them at these sites, even though,
That's not a consensus.
but like you said, it's something like this, you should have done a ranked voting, where you did 1, 2, 3, and then you count the votes, like we had been doing with all the votes with TDA up to that point. But we all sucked it up. I was all on board for 3 schools, the plan that's being put out, and everything that's going on. That's where I think I was trying to rush at the beginning. Watch the school board meeting up front. We got all these questions. We had board members say, why weren't those brought up ahead? We had the time between the end of the school board meeting. I think that was just that's what I'm reading is a lot of people are saying, we all took and gave what we wanted to see, and that's what we presented. So do what you need to do, but we did saying that, well, I talked to 2 people on, but we talked to 2 people on Edward Street, what's 2 people of the community, larger community. Jill went out and talked to people. You guys went to talk to people. It wasn't just the one community event. We did the research. Mr. Madison went and talked to a ton of people outside the community who provided us input that helped us get to this point too. We're not talking, it's not us, the facilities community. There was a ton of other community input.
Thank you. Thank you for that.
And add that I have complete confidence in our Campbell educators, that if we are under construction in 2 years and it takes up part of a playground, as an educator myself, I know what amazing work we can do in a classroom. And I know that our Campbell teachers, being the best teachers that they are, will manage to get our children outside and find a place for recess. I have complete confidence that that is not going to be something that is we're gonna, our children are going to lose because of construction. Our teachers are amazing here. They will find ways to get our kids outdoors and in a safe location.
Jill, they keep creating.
They will find a place. Teachers are amazing. Our teachers are amazing. They will find somewhere.
Absolutely.
You know what, it's past 7:30. We're gonna have to cut on it at this time. I appreciate everybody coming. Thank you for all of you on it. Next up is we have 1 minute.
Yes, we do.